incumbent Superintendent Joy Hofmeister and challenger Linda Murphy. Thank you both so much for being here this evening. It means a lot that you are willing to engage in the process and allow the public to see you answer some questions about a very important issue right now. Not that anybody cares about education in Oklahoma this year or anything like that. My name is Trace Savage. I'm the editor-in-chief of NonDoc.com. We're an independent journalism publication based in Oklahoma City. I'm here with Josh McBee, our managing editor in the background, Ben White walking down here to take photos, our wonderful intern from the Gaylord College, himself a student, a recent graduate of an Oklahoma high school. We are making this debate possible with the work of several nonpartisan partners. Andy Moore is in the balcony there with Let's Fix This, a nonpartisan organization that promotes voter involvement in Oklahoma. And we also have representatives Amy Kieran and Elizabeth Seidler, I believe, from Generation Citizen, a national organization with a local chapter that is devoted to civic engagement among young people. We have two of their students that they work with who are keeping time for us tonight. Tonight's debate is also made possible thanks to generous financial sponsors, a pair of them. We have McSpadden, Milner, and Robinson. I see Milner right there. They're a leading advocacy firm at the state capitol that represent a variety of clients. And then we also have the Oklahoma Public Schools Resource Center. Brent Bushy with OPSRC provides consulting and professional development to more than 220 member school districts across Oklahoma. Additionally, schools can access products and services via member discounts and subsidies. Good thing I mentioned Brent because I almost forgot Joe Dorman. The Oklahoma Institute of Child Advocacy is a partner in this event as well. Thank you, Joe, for helping promote this and making this possible. With that, the only person left to thank is Bobby Griffith and the wonderful team here with City Presbyterian Church. I believe I see Julie Serban here in the audience somewhere. Yes, hi. Thank you so much for the use of this beautiful facility that has really come back to life in a great part of Oklahoma City. Before we start, let's also mention that Democrat John Cox and Independent Larry Huff will appear on the November general election ballot for this office. But right now, we're between the two candidates seeking the GOP nomination. The election, we're going to be done with runoffs. When? Tuesday. I think everybody is excited about opening statement and your closing statement. At that point, you'll see the timekeepers we have holding up their signs. Let's meet the journalists who are on stage with us tonight. They've done a series of these debates with us to help encourage public dialogue, public discussion of our statewide candidates. Aaron Brilbeck is a political reporter with KWTV News 9. Occasionally he gets sent to cover a fire against his will, but he covers the Capitol with me and Claire and other people at the state Capitol. Does a great job. Claire Donnelly is with KGOU. She used to be she's a morning host and a reporter with KGOU here in Oklahoma City. She previously worked for the city desk in WBEZ Chicago. She has a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University. That's a long debate. I messed a couple things up, but let's get started. It's the end of a long week. We flipped that coin, and Ms. Murphy, you've got 2 minutes to introduce us to your candidacy.
I'm Linda Murphy. I'm a 30-year certified teacher from Oklahoma, certified in the state of Oklahoma, and taught in public schools in Oklahoma, in Caddo County and Osage County. I worked in the area of special needs students and students who had visually related learning problems in a private clinical setting for about 10 years as well. I represented a foundation out of California. At the same time, I directed the vision therapy clinic and represented them in research and education around the United States, speaking to doctors, vision therapists, and teachers all over the U.S. We did about 200 in-service training seminars for teachers at that time in the state of Oklahoma to help them pick up the visual learning problems of students. So I've always worked in the area of vision and learning and education, and my certification has been very important to me. So I'm very concerned about the fact that we have over 30,000 teachers in the state that are not working with students in the public schools right now. And that is because they are concerned about some issues that we'll be discussing. They are not just concerned about teacher pay. In fact, the veteran teachers are more concerned about the control and regulation that's placed upon them in the classroom. So I oppose that. I have opposed that when I started running against Sandy Garrett in 1994. I got 49.5% of the vote at that time statewide, and the issue was outcomes-based education. That is a top-down control system. We got it again with Common Core, and unfortunately, we're still on that track. But I'll be talking about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Superintendent Hofmeister, you have 2 minutes.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming and spending a Friday night talking about education and participating in the voting process by being engaged and being a part of what is so important for our kids in education. And also for those who are watching at home, thank you for also joining us. So, as State Superintendent, every decision that I make, every policy that we adopt or put forward has to answer one question, and that is it in the best interest for children? Is it going to help them succeed? Will it give them a strong public education, one that's well-rounded? Will it increase the engagement of the community, families, and teachers alike? And so as I work to establish meaningful momentum and improvements, I'm doing that collaboratively. I believe that the community has to be involved. Education affects us all. And we need to, and I have, included teachers, families, our school leaders, our faith-based community, our business leaders. We are all stakeholders in education. And together we have put forward some plans. Some have been to have higher standards. Others to reduce testing by slashing that budget by nearly 40%. Giving ACT to all students in the 11th grade or SAT based on a district choice. There is so much work that needs to be done, and teachers are at the center of that work. So the crippling teacher shortage is what we have set out to first make a priority, knowing kids need to have the best. They need to be trained, and I am grateful for all of you who stood with us supporting landmark legislation, the first step with competitive pay.
Thank you so much. I do want to just note that when you do see the time's up, feel free to finish your thought. We're not going to yank the microphone away, so feel free to finish your thought. With that, let's go to the first round of questions in the category of the job. The State Superintendent of Education has a robust one, and we're going to turn it over to Aaron Brilbeck to ask the first question of Superintendent Hofmeister.
Ms. Hofmeister, after 4 years in your current position as State Superintendent of Public Instruction, what do you believe is the most important responsibility of your job?
So I think the most important responsibility is to be an advocate for those who have no voice, particularly. I know that it is also to think through the big picture of how do we make meaningful progress and achievement for Oklahoma school kids. And it starts with the teacher. Our teachers have walked out of Oklahoma classrooms, not in April, but they have been doing that for the past number of years because of limited resources, because they have had to make sacrifices that they could no longer make, and they want to remain in teaching. We are absolutely committed to ensuring that we have a well-rounded education, and this is part of the job to look at where are we, where do we want to go, and how will we build a collaborative plan, a comprehensive plan to get there. And then we've got to invest and fund it.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks. Ms. Murphy, you've sought the office now twice. What do you believe is the most important responsibility?
Well, I think that the leadership at the State Department of Education is vitally important for education in the state, that we need to turn our system to a direction that will bring success. We have not seen that. For the last 2 years, we've had lower test scores. We're told that the standards are higher, and that is why. The standards are not academically higher, but they're different. They're a different form of thinking, a different form of questions, and they align, as Superintendent Cox said earlier today, they align with Common Core. That's what we have. We have nationalized testing that is benchmarked with NAEP, National Assessment of Education Progress, which comes directly from the Federal Department of Education. And I say we need to have our own testing, our own standards and testing, and we need to have control of that. Local control is the answer. We will get excellence when we turn that around.
Ms. Hofmeister, I see you shaking your head.
Well, that's just not accurate. We teach our children that we need to be accurate, and it's important that I set that more clearly for you. Common Core was repealed, and we wrote new academic standards, not at 23rd and Lincoln, but with Oklahoma teachers and with Oklahoma stakeholders, and that has been vetted by a variety of different groups as required under state law. The tests that we give are aligned to our academic standards, and that is a fact.
Ms. Murphy, would you like to reply to that?
Yes, I would. The Brookings Institute has put out a white paper that's very clear that the NAEP test is not a test to use for proficiency, and that's how we are benchmarked. And our testing is coming back with a proficiency rating without information that teachers can use in the classroom. Ask some teachers in the public schools about that. Lower elementary and up through the 8th grade is what I'm referring to.
Thank you very much. Ms. Murphy, real quick, I'm going to give you 15 seconds. The original question was what you think the most important role of the superintendent is. What would you
I thought you were letting me rebut.
No, I am, but I just want to know that also.
Okay, the most important role is that you lead the state in a direction that will bring excellence in education. And to do that, the teachers have to be free to teach. Right now, on a survey, they were showing that 64 to 75% of them would return to the classroom if we get the regulations and the control off of them so they can make decisions.
Thank you very much. Claire, you have the next question, I believe.
Yes. So this is for Ms. Murphy. Education Week's 2018 annual state-by-state education report ranks Oklahoma 46th among 50 states and the District of Columbia with an overall grade of D+. The state's school finance rating is a D, and the K-12 Achievement Index also yields Oklahoma with a D. What are the biggest factors holding Oklahoma back in terms of common education?
Well, once again, I don't think we can get away from the fact that it's the teacher in the classroom that makes the difference. And we can't go into a total technology-delivered system and expect that we're going to get students improving, especially in lower elementary. They need a lot of teacher involvement. We've got high class sizes. We need to reduce those in the elementary level. And we know that that is a problem that needs to be funded. We need to make sure that we make an inviting environment for teachers not only to stay in the classroom, but for new teachers to come into the classroom. We have to have the teachers to change that.
Same question to you, Ms. Hofmeister. What do you think? I'm sorry, do you want me to? Yeah. Okay, sorry. So what do you think are the biggest factors holding Oklahoma back in terms of common education?
Without question, it is the crippling teacher shortage. This is something that we are now really feeling the full weight of the crisis we have been warning this state about for the last 3.5 years. I pray that we have hit rock bottom, yet this is a problem that has been addressed with a significant step forward with competitive pay, but that is just one step of many that need to occur. So in order to make certain that we are meeting the needs of kids, we first have to address the fact that people need to want to go into education. You know, I'm a teacher. I've always wanted to be a teacher. And there's nothing more thrilling than working with a child and having the ability to meet their needs. But we have oversized classrooms, we have teachers that lack the training that they desperately are clamoring for, working with students who have experienced trauma, working with children that have language barriers, all kinds of needs that need to be addressed, and we have a plan and are on our way in addressing those.
Thank you very much. Claire, go ahead. Did you want to?
Oh, no, I was just going to say thank you.
If you can't figure it out by now, we are rotating who answers the questions first. Claire has the next question, I believe, for Superintendent Hofmeister.
Yep. So the State Board of Education has already issued more than 2,000 emergency certifications for teachers this year, even after the pay raise passed for educators that's taken effect for the current academic calendar. That's the second. That makes this the second consecutive year that the state has set a record for emergency teaching certifications. What's the State Department of Education doing to recruit certified teachers, and did the teacher pay raise help stem that problem?
That is exactly the point of having our teacher shortage task force. That is what we did. We got all of the stakeholders together, from higher ed, College of Educations, classroom teachers, family members that are experiencing oversized classrooms, having a revolving door of substitutes in our special education classes across the state, and said, all right, let's form the task force for immediate and intermediate and long-term solutions. It was the work of that task force that commissioned the teacher survey of the 32,000 who are no longer teaching in an Oklahoma classroom but continue to make their certification current. And we asked them, what does it take to get you back? Why did you leave? And those answers provide evidence to take to the legislature that help reinforce what we already knew, that teachers need resources, they need instruction, and they need autonomy to do what they do best, teach.
Just real quick before, yeah, are you going to
I was just going to follow up.
Yeah,
I was going to follow up and say, do you feel like that teacher pay raise is helping to stem that?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, it is absolutely having a meaningful impact. Teachers have yet to receive that paycheck. And when that paycheck is arriving in their bank accounts in August, I think they will begin to believe what I believe, and that is that education is a priority, but it must be a priority every single year.
Same question to you, Ms. Murphy.
Okay. On the teachers and the certification. This survey that we keep referring to has more information in it. And it says that the teachers who are the experienced veteran teachers who have left the classroom, they're still certified. These experienced veteran teachers say they are less concerned about the pay raise. They are more concerned about issues like regulations from the state, not being able to make decisions in their class, and having an accountability system that makes them responsible for factors that they have no control over. So we need to change or eliminate the A through F report card the way it is being utilized. It's really inhibiting. It is not producing, well, we don't have results. Do we wait 8 years? We've got an 8-year plan now that's been produced. Do we wait 8 years and say it takes 8 years to fulfill that? No, we can turn this around quickly if we get back to local control and let teachers teach in the classroom. That's what they're asking for.
So just to follow up, do you think that the teacher pay raise helped stem the emergency certification problem?
I think it did overall. I think it was really important to start getting pay into teachers so they know they're encouraged. A couple of districts have paid $40,000 this year for starting salaries. They added money to what was in the teacher pay raise. So, it's beginning to kick in and really have an effect. Yes.
Ms. Hofmeister, I noticed that you were shaking your head on that one too. Would you care to explain?
Yeah. I take great pride in the fact that we led the charge to decouple any kind of TLE VAM, which is called Value Added Measure, which was a broken, woefully unsuccessful experiment. We fought against it, and under my leadership, it was repealed in state law.
Yes, that part was repealed, and I agreed with that, but we still have TLE going on in our public schools. And just last week, I believe it was, or recently, the superintendents had to send in a lengthy report. They have to follow a process out of the state. Once again, we're not letting the people on the local level make decisions about how to evaluate, how to teach. These are the issues that I hear all across the state. I'm a Republican, I'm in a Republican runoff, and I've been to Republican events all over the state, about 60, 65 of them. My opponent has been to maybe 3 that I'm aware of. This is the first time we've spoke together today, earlier today and now. But this issue is very important, and we need to get the regulations off of the teachers.
All right, I want to address that because, again, the decisions that I make are not going to be partisan, and I'm going to go where there are people that need to have a conversation around education. I haven't crossed this state and visited party, county, little gatherings. I have had to make a choice. Political events or being in classrooms, being with teachers, being at the legislature, fighting for what will make a difference for children. At the end of the day, it has to be about kids, not partisan politics.
Thank you.
know, we have a government, we have a process of election. If we did not have two parties, would we have an election? What would we have? So we have two parties, and each party nominates their candidate, and that nominee then is in the general election. So I think that that is a unfair and inaccurate statement. If you go to the people that are voting in the Republican Party, I think that makes sense.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question. Aaron, I believe you have it for Ms. Murphy.
Ms. Murphy, the Oklahoma Secondary Schools Athletic Association regulates competitive activities between school districts. While OSSA is a separate state agency, its board of directors are all school-related personnel, and over the years it's been, putting it mildly, criticized as not focusing on the best interest of parents and students. Should the OSSA be moved under the Oklahoma State Department of Education so the statewide elected official would have oversight, and if so, why?
I don't think so. I think that that needs to be looked at closely. We certainly know there are big problems there, but I don't see a need to put that under the State Department of Education.
And I agree. It's a local membership organization, and that's where it belongs. We do not need to grow government.
Thank you.
Is there enough oversight of OSSAA?
Again, that's private. That is a group of people who have chosen to be members. They set their rules and they implement those. They do need to, I understand, comply with certain regulations. But that is not something that the State Department of Education needs to be involved in regulating. That would be the legislature.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, anything? Okay. All right. Let's move on to round number 2, I believe. This is going to involve the walkout and then the reforms. We've heard calls for a lot of things during the walkout, and we've also heard calls for reforms of the education system in the state of Oklahoma. For this round, since this is maybe a little meatier of a topic, we're going to go to 2 minutes per answer to each question for both candidates. So I believe, Aaron, you have the first question for Superintendent Hofmeister.
Ms. Hofmeister, the Oklahoma legislature passed a major increase to the state's education budget that included textbook funding, teacher pay raises, and support staff pay raises at the end of March. On April 2nd, many of the schools shut down, and teachers, parents, and students filled the Capitol for 2 weeks demanding additional funding. No additional funding was granted, but some education advocates expressed frustration with you for seeming to encourage resolution to the walkout. Was the walkout in the end worth it, and what was most important about the accomplishments, if there were any accomplishments, of the walkout itself?
Well, number one, I absolutely supported the right of any teacher, community member, parent, family, student to protest the governor and their legislators. That is part of free speech and advocacy. I applaud the school board members who made a local decision in how to best accommodate the advocacy of the teachers and the community within their own local school district, and they gave room in some particular districts for days off, so that that would not provide for any kind of jeopardizing of a contract between a board and a teacher. What you saw in the walkout was a manifestation of something that had been brewing for the last 10 years of eroded funding to public education. And these were the teachers who didn't walk out to other states. These were the teachers who didn't walk out to another profession, but they stayed and they fought for their kids, and I support that advocacy. As state superintendent, we have to also work in the world of education advocacy before that kind of demonstration and protest of neglect that had occurred over a decade. And we also continue working. But at the end of the day, my decisions had to be about clearing the path to allow that advocacy and also not jeopardize the needs of our children. How did we make decisions? It is always going to be about what is in the best interest of the children that I am charged with serving, and that's what we did.
Just to clarify, though, after the walkout began, there were no additional concessions given by the legislature or the governor. So was the walkout really worth it?
Oh, absolutely it was worth it, and I disagree. There were concessions made. We fought very hard at the Capitol, well into the late night, to see some additional revenue measures passed. And that was also so very, very critical and important to showing the teachers that it is more than a deaf ear at this is about just pay. Instead, this was about public school funding all across the state. This was not about teachers coming together saying, I want more. This was about, I need more for them, for all of our children in this state. And no one knows that better than the teachers in Oklahoma classrooms right now.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, same question. Was the walkout worth it? And if it was, what was the largest accomplishment of the walkout in your opinion?
Well, I agree that it was inevitable. It was a buildup of frustration and stress of teachers all over the state. And I also agree that teachers have a right and a responsibility to talk to their legislators. It's part of our process of government. And there was nothing wrong with that at all. Schools that were closed, that gave teachers permission to be there, that was not a strike. Some people called it a strike. It was a walkout, and they were given permission to do that. So there was no problem with that. There was a school district, and actually a lot of school districts across the state did not close. They chose not to go, not because they didn't care, but they advocated in their own way. So it wasn't a statewide universal agreement about how to go to the Capitol and what to do. And once the teachers were there, I had a lot of phone calls from teachers that didn't even know each other that had different views of what was happening. We had a lot of different groups there. So it's kind of like looking at the elephant from whichever angle you look at it, you're going to see the tail or the ears or maybe the whole elephant. But what I didn't like was the OEA union having the mic for 9 days, and at the end of that time, not being able to even tell the press a specific goal. I think that was a big problem, and I think leadership in the State Department of Ed, State Superintendent, could have helped that, going to the mic, speaking to the press more about the truth, about what was going on.
I'll give you an opportunity, if you don't mind, to respond to that.
I disagree. I've already been at the mic. I've already been there. It was the request of ours to have a teacher competitive pay from the beginning. During the Step Up Plan, I did stand at the podium, and this was a different time. This, if you will recall, already had a pay raise passed. This was about teachers coming saying, we're not done. It's not about us. It's about our children. And we needed to allow this to not be an event that had some elected official, and I declined to take that mic for that reason, because it wasn't about me. It was about teachers collectively standing up for their kids in their own communities.
We want to offer equal time, Ms. Murphy, another 30 seconds.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but I believe this. I believe that at the end of that 9 days, that was a long period of time, there was no more money to be added, and a lot of teachers thought that what they did caused the raise. It didn't. The walkout was after the raise was already given, and I know you just said that, but I'm talking about the confusion that existed at the state capitol, and where there's chaos and confusion, that's where leadership is needed. That's my point.
Thank you very much. Next question is Claire's, and it'll go to Ms. Murphy first.
Ms. Murphy, like many conservative legislators, you've attempted to thread a needle with your political positioning on the teacher pay raise package passed last March. On the one hand, you've supported raising teacher pay, but on the other hand, you've suggested it could have been accomplished without raising taxes. Do you believe House Bill 1010XX, that's the revenue bill that received 3/4 support from lawmakers, was necessary?
Well, I think if you will look at the Treasurer's report that came in July, $1.2 billion now sits in the Treasury that did not exist last year. That money was coming in all along, and I think some of those legislators who had foresight knew that our revenue was growing and that we would be able to pay the pay raise. So they passed the pay raise as a separate bill, and then they passed the tax bill. You know, you can't make other people see and understand what you know. But I'm just telling you from my experience being at the state capitol, I knew that money was coming in. You know, you can't undo what's done. I'm glad teachers have a pay raise. It's there, so that additional about $600 million, I believe, will be in the Treasury as well. But the $1.2 billion would have been way more than enough to cover it.
Ms. Hofmeister.
Yeah, a chance to respond for you.
So what part of we're in a crisis is hard to understand. I mean, we're living in the trenches. We have emergency certified teachers because there's no one certified even applying. And so districts are having to respond. In 2011-12 school year, 32 emergency certifications were requested. Last year, 1,975. Already in 3 months this year, we have exceeded 2,100. I asked the question, how many kids did that affect? Last year, 104,000 children did not have a teacher in the class that had been tested for the grade or subject they were teaching. They may be fine people, and we want to hang on to them, and we want to train them, and we want to support them. But that is shameful, and that can't wait.
Do you believe that the tax bill was necessary?
100%.
I do. Ms. Hofmeister, Oklahoma has more than 500 school districts, more than 500 school superintendents. Some districts have far fewer than 100 total students. It's not politically proper right now, or popular rather, to campaign on consolidating school districts, but do you believe that all of these districts with all those superintendents are resulting in efficient use of state education monies?
So we have about 512 school districts, and then if you add some of the other arrangements with interlocal co-ops, it goes higher. I think we have too many school districts. I've said that for the last 4 or 5 years. But when you have a conversation about efficiency, I think that's very important that we talk about that. And we have utilized, promoted a way for our local school districts to tap into a fund that is an incentive for combining services. And we have actually seen that number grow. It's a small number, but it has actually doubled under my administration. We've also closed a school district that couldn't survive, all right? But it's going to take the legislature. If we're to do anything that would be around the conversation of consolidation. Here's what I think matters. And again, it's back to what's best for kids. So my question is, are children receiving a high-quality education in every school district? And that's how I think we are able to make decisions in local communities. I think people need good information to make good decisions. At the end of the day, I believe local school districts want the best for their kids, but they haven't had good, reliable, valid information. That is coming. And we are excited about a new day with accountability, one that is meaningful, one that measures growth, one that also goes far beyond test scores and works to ensure that our families, our communities have a way to support their schools, to perhaps pass initiatives to improve a particular aspect that is not yet well-rounded. And at all of this, at the center of it, it's going to have to be about student outcomes and providing for our children the very best we can give.
Just to clarify though, I mean, our report card is still not a very positive one compared with other states. Are we getting as much bang for our buck as we should with 500 plus superintendents in school districts?
So you're referring to a report card that I ran against. It was invalid, it was unreliable, and it was not something that anyone could actually find a meaning with. So that's been overhauled. That has been part of a change in federal law, one that I fought to have, one that should be about measuring both growth and a high bar, but we've got to be able to tell the stories of our schools in the context of the work in their communities. And so it is something that is coming and will be part of the rollout by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Ms. Murphy, 2 minutes to you, same question.
Yes, I'm very concerned because of the testing that we have now. The new standards have been rewritten after we repealed Common Core, but we have new standards that have been rewritten, and then now we have new testing, which comes in alignment with the National Assessment of Education Progress. That's the Federal Department of Education. That is not our own testing items that we select, and then we have an academic test with aligned testing. Teachers all over the state say these tests are not aligned with the standards that we have been given. Now, there are new methods, new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of processing, that are being integrated into this. It's not just pure academics. I know it's important that students know how to think, but you're not going to get that from students by putting it in testing and in standards and forcing it from the top down. Good teachers know how to guide students and direct students in better thinking skills.
Ms. Murphy, I apologize. I inadvertently poured gasoline on a testing fire. The question was, though, in terms of the 500 plus 512, I guess, different school districts that we have, should there be mandatory consolidation, forced consolidation?
Well, I'll just say this. When we straighten out the good academic standards and have those in place, which some of the ones we have now are good, I don't have a problem with all of them. I think we can improve them. We're not testing history. There are things that are dropping from schools around the state that we need to really look at and make sure, just because we're not testing it doesn't mean it's not important. But that's the kind of system we have created, that has been created. So when the academic standards are in place and the testing truly aligns, then we can really measure where we are with student performance. Until then, what we have is a reset with failure for 2 years into a totally new system. And all of this is costly. These are changes being made that also cost money.
With due respect, I don't think you answered the question in terms of...
To consolidate. Okay, so as far as consolidating, then we can see which schools need to be consolidated. That's the point. The ones that are not performing well, I agree. If they're performing well, we don't want to close that school down unless there's an excessive amount of money, but that's a local decision sometimes because it's local money. If it's state money and it's not being utilized well, we can take care of that. But we need a system where we've got accountability that is fair and accurate and focused on academics for students, whether they're going into career tech or college. And I'm talking about the lower elementary up to 8th grade. They still need that academic foundation.
Ms. Hofmeister, would you care to respond?
Yeah, I do need to address an inaccuracy that continues to be stated, and I think it is rooted perhaps in a misunderstanding. I don't think that you would be purposefully trying to mislead. So here's how this works. The academic standards are written by Oklahoma educators. Then new assessments have to be written that test those particular standards. I don't understand the talk about some other tests, because in Oklahoma we have 3rd through 8th grade, this is actually required under federal law. We must have assessments that are aligned to the standards, and every one of the tests and questions have gone through the hands of Oklahoma teachers as they have been a part of writing those and constructing those test items. So I just want you to be aware that that is 100% false, and that is something, we have 7,000 pages of evidence that was submitted for peer review and granted and came back as absolutely aligned and has nothing to do with some other test. That's just absolutely false.
15 seconds.
I agree that you don't understand. This is about a top-down control plan for education, and you think that couldn't happen. We've had it before, and we've gotten rid of it. And we need to get on a track that gives us true local control. We're not going to get teachers forced into better educating. And if we end up with all of our experienced teachers out of the classroom and only new teachers in the classroom, they'll follow the processes, they'll follow the line, they'll follow the program, but they don't have the skill and knowledge yet. We need that experience base in the classroom.
We good? Okay, with that, I'm sure we could talk about this afterwards as well. We'll have a chance to meet with the candidates as well. Claire, I believe you have the last question of round 2 for Ms. Murphy.
Yes. Ms. Murphy, state question 801 will be on the November ballot. If passed, it would allow local school districts to pass bonds that also help school operations. The first subhead on your website's list of policy guidelines is local control. Do you support state question 801?
Yes, I think that overall that it would be an improvement. 801 gives local school districts the option to use their local funding in other ways than what they can use it for now. They could use it for textbooks, they could use it for teacher salaries, and I think giving that local control flexibility is a good thing. However, I have the caution that doing that doesn't mean we've given every school more money to spend. It does not. So I understand why people oppose it too, because if you pass it and people think that we've given schools more money on the local level, we really haven't. There are school districts that don't have much local money. They get almost all of their money from the state. So that will not free money up for them. So I think we need to be careful. That's in November. I'm not fully decided. I lean toward the local control, yes, but I also see the downside of it.
Ms. Hofmeister, do you support state question 801?
I can't support it. I do understand the need and desire to give flexibility to school districts. What I'm concerned about is that it is simply taking money out of the right pocket and putting it in the left. It is not new money. We are having this conversation because of a decade of eroded funding for public education. We shouldn't have to be scrambling to find ways to provide the support, textbooks, etc. And then I have to think further down the road when I think about our children attending schools where pressure perhaps has been put on a school board by a community not quite clear on what would be at risk, where you would see deferred maintenance, where you could see crumbling assets in our buildings, and then you have an even greater expense. So does this work for certain districts? Yeah. But for many districts, it will not. And I think it provides for some a false idea that they have voted in more funding for schools.
Thank you very much. Let's go to round 3. We're going to get into the politics of all these things, and the fact that this is a campaign. We'll vote on Tuesday. Aaron, I believe you have the first question for Superintendent Hofmeister.
Ms. Hofmeister, Oklahoma County District Attorney David Prater ultimately dropped felony charges that he filed against you and others related to alleged collusion with dark money group during your 2014 campaign. What do you tell voters who might have read the court documents featuring communications between you and Ryan Owens, a supporter of your campaign, who was involved in the creation of an independent expenditure that targeted your 2014 opponent?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to address that. That matter obviously should never have been brought in a political campaign of days before my primary race in 2014. That was brought to the Ethics Commission as well as to the District Attorney. And over a period of time, then charges were filed, again, only days before the state question 779 with the teacher pay raise at stake. When the District Attorney saw the facts and realized the flawed, inaccurate statements that were placed in an affidavit to tarnish my name, my reputation, he dropped everything. Not just for me, but for everyone. I have moved on. I have peace in my heart that I've always had because I knew the truth, and the truth matters. And by the way, that district attorney has joined me to work this October 2nd. We are working together on something that we both care deeply about, and together we are providing a trauma summit for Oklahoma teachers, helping with trauma-informed instruction.
So just to follow up, do you believe Mr. Owens then broke the law?
I think you are assuming everything is accurate in the statement that was there.
I'll ask you the very same question then. Do you believe the Superintendent Hofmeister broke the law? Do you believe that Mr. Owens broke the law?
Well, that is up to the legal authorities to make a determination. But what I do know is when District Attorney Prater dropped the 5 felony charges, he said that he is not finished. He said, I have further investigation to do. It was in the Tulsa World, and I believe it was in NonDoc. It might have been Oklahoma Watch, but it's in a couple of places published. That was his public statement. He said, we're not done. Now, in July this year, right after the primary, June 26th primary, July 1st, there was an article in the Daily Oklahoman, Nolan Clay wrote, and he said that the Ethics Commission had a case against Superintendent Hofmeister that they wanted to prosecute on ethics charges, but they did not because they did not have the budget to do it. They didn't get the funding, so it wasn't because they didn't have a case or didn't want to prosecute it.
Ms. Hofmeister?
All right, so here's what I know. When you speak truth to power, when you stand up to the status quo in your own party, when you take a stand, whether you have somebody standing next to you or an army behind you, you're going to have people who oppose you. I do not allow that noise keep me from focusing on what matters for kids. And what I can tell you is that that, again, is also false. Because what we know is that the Ethics Commission hasn't had their budget slashed for years and years on end since this came up. So it's convenient that at a time when they're suing the legislature, it was then somehow by some anonymous source considered part of the news right in another election cycle. That's politics. This is something that you have to learn to deal with at times as a leader. But what I have shown is that I'm battle tested, and nothing will keep me from doing what's right for kids.
Murphy, 15 seconds.
Yes, I have to say that it was an anonymous source, it was not. Nolan Clay wrote the story. He quoted the Ethics Commission officials. You can look it up for yourself. And a lot of details are in the story.
Let me just go right ahead.
Yes, okay, I have to answer this. Because, number one, the Ethics Commission never spoke to me, ever, except for a few days before 2014, right after an election, after my political opponent went to them with some trumped-up story. And so if you would think that this is actually something that has any merit to it, that is pretty shocking that they wouldn't even discuss any questions, seek clarification, or anything. The truth of the matter is the matter was closed. And it is, I think, egregious to think that that's how we're going to spend state dollars, going after, political prosecution of some sort. No, this is about kids. We're not taking our eye off the ball.
Yes, it is about kids, and we need integrity in the office. You can believe what you want to, but I'm just saying, D.A. Prater himself said he wasn't finished with the investigation. I think he needs to make a public statement. If he's going to clear you and make that public, then that would be fine, but it hasn't been done.
He has in
No,
a
not
joint,
publicly.
yes,
He
a
said he
joint,
did.
he invited me to work together with him. That would be highly inappropriate if there was anything to this. He saw through the politics, and it is over. It should have ended long before. But what is important to voters is to know what I did. I didn't shrink back. I could have taken the easy way out. I could have resigned. I was offered that, and I said no. And then charges came months later.
Thank you both.
Thank you both. Let's go to the next question. Claire, you have Ms. Murphy.
So a lot of your campaign materials lack specific plans or policy statements. What is the least popular policy that you believe is right for Oklahoma?
I'm sorry, but you've said two things now about negative implications about my campaign and what I've said. I have a big website, lindamurphy.com. Go read for yourself. There's a whole page of policy. There are about 10 interviews with radio, lots of articles. There's a lot of information. So what is your specific question?
What is the least popular policy that you believe is right for Oklahoma?
The least popular policy I have?
No, the least popular policy is statewide.
Oh, statewide. It's all the regulation. It's a top-down control, the loss of local control, which encompasses a lot of things. The TLE, the teacher leader evaluation, evaluations of teachers, which is not working well. Yes, teachers need to be accountable, but we need to be accountable in our local districts, and then we need to produce results and be accountable for those results. And we can measure that with good testing and good standards alone.
And then same question for you, Ms. Hofmeister. What do you think is the least popular policy in Oklahoma that you support?
Least popular policy. I think they're all great. The least popular I'll tell you what I think the least popular is our teachers have initiative fatigue. They are tired of changes that happen with changes in federal law, changes in state law. So I'm going to just answer that a little bit more kind of collectively. And that is when you see changes that occur and you have turnover, there are a lot of people who have entered the field that don't know what has changed in previous years. And there is often, I think, a need for strong mentoring, more support, and wherever we have the issues of something being unpopular, we have to ask the question, well, why are we doing what this particular law or regulation requires? If it has an effect on lifting outcomes, but maybe an adult doesn't like it, then I have to side with the student and the lifting outcomes. If it is about more transparency, and some schools don't like that, we're going to always come down on increased transparency. I think that all depends on who you ask. Do you have a specific?
Oh no, that was just generally.
Yeah, the idea that sometimes it's not in a political campaign a wise move to talk about things that you really want to do but might not be super popular among the masses. That was the gist of it. We'll rephrase in future elections. Claire, I think you have another question for Superintendent Hofmeister.
Yes. In some ways, it's a bit surprising that both of the GOP candidates for state superintendent have not been vocal advocates for school choice issues like vouchers or charter school expansion. Do you favor vouchers or education savings accounts? And would a greater emphasis on charter schools improve outcomes for students in larger Oklahoma towns and cities?
You know, I do think that parents need to have choice. And I think it's very important that parents have informed choice. We already have in Oklahoma a very broad school choice policy. Do I think we need to introduce new experiments? No. Am I a supporter of vouchers? No. What I believe we must do instead is to focus on all of the public school children who are in our schools today and ask the question, why have they left? Or why have they chosen a different path? Does it have something to do with the quality of what we are giving in our public schools? And then what do we need to do to improve that, if that's the case? I don't think we can walk away from public education. I am the state superintendent of public instruction. That is my top priority. That is where 95% of our Oklahoma school children reside. But make no mistake, we have to give families options. Restrictions of those options are something that as a mom of 4 kids, I would demand. I would demand the option, okay?
Same question to you, Ms. Murphy. Do you support school choice vouchers?
I don't support vouchers. That is really a situation on two sides of the coin that I think is a problem. And one side is putting public money into private schools and into homeschools brings regulation. If you're going to give government money, you've got to regulate how it's spent to some degree. And that's what's happening in other states around us. So I oppose it. But I also oppose vouchers because it does take more money out of the public school system. I think there are other ways to help parents in our state without doing that. I support the charters that we have that are working well. I'm not for rolling that back and taking those away. They exist, but we need transparency in our charter system. That's a private-public system using public money, but it's in private hands. So we need to have more transparency. We've got a problem where a state auditor, Gary Jones, found $2.3 million was put into a charter school's foundation from our state money. Instead of the foundation helping the charter school, our money went into their foundation. That was in an audit. So we've got a problem there.
Thank you very much. Aaron, you have a question for Ms. Murphy.
I do. Ms. Murphy, you oppose Common Core standards, yet your campaign literature has indicated that you have problems with the currently approved state standards. I think you mentioned that once or twice here tonight, too. If you don't approve, once or twice, if you don't approve of what we already have in place, what sort of standards would you prefer?
I don't don't think that all of the standards in place now are a problem. My greater concern is that the testing needs to be academically focused testing. We can't teach every way of thinking and learning in a test, and that's what's in there now. The processes that were in the Common Core testing are in this testing. It's the national testing. We need to have, I would call it standardized academic testing is what we need with our standards. And that's what the bill that repealed Common Core called for. Non-Common Core testing, as well as non-Common Core standards.
I'll just take to clarify, what do you mean the processes are the same?
The processes, spending long periods of time in processing math problems, and the writing test has long processes that the students go through in the test. It's not just a simple academic test as we've had in years past. And I think sometimes new ideas are good, and sometimes they really are just an experiment that haven't been proven, and that's what we have with the Common Core testing. It's not proven.
Ms. Hofmeister, you're shaking your head.
We can't have Common Core testing because our particular standards are not Common Core. So that is against federal law because we wrote new standards. There's just no way to say this any other way. This is just 100% inaccurate. I think that what may be described is something that might be a fear, or it may be a misunderstanding. However, at the end of the day, we repealed 7 end-of instruction tests, and we replaced that with something that had value for students long after they graduated the ACT or the SAT, depending on a district's choice. Everything else is to get them ready to be able to walk out of high school on that graduation stage and enter into career certification, the military service, or college, ready to hit the ground running.
Ms. Murphy?
The Brookings Institute says that the NAEP test, which we are benchmarked to, is a Common Core test. It's aligned with Common Core, just as State or Superintendent Cox said earlier today in the Forum for State Superintendents earlier today. It's true. It is a Common Core line. I mean, I know you don't intend that. I can tell you're sincere, that I'll get the research to you, and maybe we can sit down and look at that.
I've seen the Brookings Institute's report. It is referring to NAEP, the National Assessment for Educational Progress. That is not what we are talking about. I don't know if it is a misunderstanding, but we do not, NAEP is only for 4th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade. We're talking about the tests that are 3rd through 8th grade right now. These are assessments written to our standards. That is indisputable. And it is accurate that 100% of those test items measure our standards. It can be no other way.
Are you saying that all of the teachers for the last 2 years where students have failed across the state have simply learned a new system that they didn't learn well because we have new standards, or they don't know what they're doing? What are you saying about that?
I'm saying that we have been more transparent about the fact that when our students are graduating from high school, our families are having to spend $22.2 million out of pocket every year to pay for courses that they should have already mastered in high school. And they are paying for that in the universities and colleges and community colleges all across the state. And they're not even able then to finish because the research says that 70% of those who need remedial courses in college will not graduate in 6 years. So this is the problem we want to solve. And by doing that, we've had to reset the bar, not just at high school and say, whoops, I'm sorry you weren't ready. Now you're going to have to pay for that with your 4-year scholarship, and it may expire before you finish. Instead, we're going to make sure that we close those learning gaps and have a fresh, clear view of where our children are in 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade, where that is a small gap, where that gap can be closed. That is about giving parents and families better information so we can all support our kids.
Ms. Murphy, 15 seconds.
Well, I will just say this. If this was really the plan, if this was really the goal, if it was truly an academic test, we would be getting data back in the classroom to the teachers when they get the test results back. All they get is a rating for proficiency. This is sorting children into groups and categories. Yes, it is true.
Superintendent
You know,
Hofmeister.
you can talk with teachers in the classroom below the 8th grade and ask them about the testing.
Good, would you?
Yeah, I'd like.
So we don't even, we use scale scores. We don't use what is being referred to, which is part of an old No Child Left Behind. The scale score is something very similar to, you recognize the scale of ACT. You know, it would be 1 to 36. So in Oklahoma, we have a new scale. That scale has a plumb line of where is that readiness to be on track for not needing remediation when you graduate. And I think that may, clearly that is either a misunderstanding, but it is not something that is based in truth or is honest.
Thank you very much.
So why do you use the words proficiency, advanced proficiency, below proficiency? That's what I'm referring to. I'm not making it up. Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, so you're referring to what are called performance labels.
Final
The
word.
performance band is simply unsatisfactory, well, it's below basic, proficient, and advanced. That is something that is part of federal law.
Thank you very much. We could talk about that all day. Maybe we will afterwards. If you see me and Aaron gesturing back here, it's because he's going to ask this extra question that we have as something that happened in the last couple of days.
I just want to applaud both of you for being so civil during that. That was very respectable for both of you, honestly.
We can discuss.
New York Times reported that U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy Lowe's and her administration are considering a policy change that would allow the use of federal education dollars to provide firearms and other weaponry for school districts. If that were allowed by the federal government, would you pursue such action? And I'll throw it to you first, if you don't mind, Ms. Hofmeister.
Sure. So what the way I would answer that is those are dollars that are meant for school districts. It would have to be the school that is requesting that. That is news to us. We actually read that in a local media and had reporters call to ask if that was true. We are unaware of that being something that has been considered in a school district here in Oklahoma. However, we do have student safety as paramount for our administration and for our team, and there are already laws that protect our students and provide more of a local plan on how to achieve that. But bottom line, federal dollars would have to be requested, and that would be up to the U.S. Department of Education to set those parameters, which we would then need to use as a tool to measure if that's appropriate.
Would you prefer not taking those monies and instead having individual school districts set those parameters?
Oh, those monies are already, those are Title IV funds for safe and healthy schools. Those are already funds that are going to come to our state. Districts provide a plan and say, this is how we want to spend those dollars. Every school district will receive a certain amount of money that is proportional to need within their school and school enrollment. So those dollars are not going away. All you're talking about is a conversation at the federal level on what they would allow as a permissible use of those funds.
Ms. Murphy, same question, please.
Right. I did read the article also, and it's grant money that already exists. So I do think that we should allow a local district to do that if it's approved on the federal level. If they want to do that, schools are arming teachers in certain situations, and other places they've got security guards. I think this is something we need to work out, and I'm not saying that the State Department of Ed couldn't have a role in policy. We can set policy and have a model policy out there, but I think that's a local decision to use that.
What would that policy look like under your administration?
Well, I've actually got friends who are very involved in law enforcement, and we've talked about this quite a bit. I think that it's going to vary depending on the school, where it's located, how they work with their police force. There are schools that have already worked out their safety plans, and I think the worst thing we could do is come in and tell them it has to be this way when they've already got a system worked out. I think we just need to look at those and pick some of the best models for policy. That's the way I would do it.
Ms. Hofmeister?
Well, we would approach this the way we already do, which is to respect the local control of local school districts. I believe those closest to problems have the best hope of solving it. There is nothing more important than keeping our children safe, and the local community knows their building, they know their access to law enforcement, they know also how very important it is to have relationships built with children, where we know our children, where we can see any kind of red flag when we are talking about an internal threat that may come from a student. It's much more than a conversation about weapons. This is about a whole community working together to keep our children safe and healthy.
Thank you both.
Wonderful. I've got to pay our security guard in 5 minutes, so let's go to the closing statements here in the debate. Thank you guys so much for your comments so far. Ms. Murphy, you get 2 minutes to open your closing statement. That doesn't make sense, but you get 2 minutes for your closing statement, followed by Superintendent Hofmeister.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. I know it's a very warm August evening. We've all got plenty to do in our lives without coming to meetings, but thank you very much. I think it's important. I appreciate NonDoc for providing a platform of discussion and bringing two candidates together so people can see the different views and where we are similar in some areas as well. But I do appreciate it. I am a teacher. That is my heart, to teach students and to help teachers have a better environment for teaching. I think it's so simple that we overlook it. Sometimes the simplicity of life is the most important thing. And we add on a lot of things. We're hearing a lot about this with technology and, busyness and schedules. That's true in the classroom as well. We need to have tools. We need to have technology that's up to date. I'm all for that. I use a computer many hours of the day myself and a lot of technology. But I think we've got to always focus back on that classroom with teachers. We need to get testing where special ed students are not required to take tests they cannot pass, and we've already written an IEP that says they can't do this level of work, yet we put them down in front of that test. That's causing meltdowns in emotions and behavior all over our state. It's unnecessary and it's illogical. So that's one of the major points. Thank you very much. Go to votelindamurphy.com. You'll find a lot of info there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Superintendent Hofmeister, 2 minutes for you.
All right, thank you. Wow, we've had some amazing challenges, truly historic challenges in Oklahoma during the last 3.5 years. But because of the determination, because of the dedication of Oklahoma stakeholders, whether that be teachers or families, business owners on Main Street, higher education, career tech, our faith-based community, we have all had a time of coming together recognizing that education has two beneficiaries: the student being educated and everyone else. This election is going to affect the trajectory of the student achievement, but also of our state. We want our children to thrive, and we want to attract our own children to stay in Oklahoma, to put down roots, to start a business. And we want them to have confidence that when they go to school, they'll be a teacher that's trained, well-equipped, that they will have the resources that they need with textbooks, with a special education director, with a speech-language pathologist, with support personnel counselors. And all of that is a priority and has been a priority with me and the people who have all come together collectively in an education coalition that has been galvanized in the last 3.5 years. And we have momentum. We have momentum right now, rolling that boulder up a hill. And we don't have the time, and we don't have the risk that is in any way prudent to waste, because our kids can't wait, and because we don't get a do-over year for any third grader or fourth grader or fifth grader. We got to get it right. I believe we are working in a way that will actually accomplish great things. We've just got to keep going and not allow the momentum to wane. We can do it. I'm committed. I'm a battle-tested champion of education and our kids, and I won't stop until all our kids have a strong, well-rounded public education. Thank you, and I ask for your vote on Tuesday, August the 28th, and if you're voting early tomorrow.